Boeing has spent years trying to get back on track after the fatal MAX 8 crashes, but the company has continued to face problems with production flaws and setbacks, including a door plug flying off a MAX 9 plane in midair after it took off from Portland, Oregon. Boeing's stock has fallen about 30% this year. The iconic company that once had a great reputation for safety is losing more and more market share to rival Airbus. It's delivered more planes and received more orders for the 5th consecutive year. Some airlines are scaling back growth plans due to delays in production.
Airlines are desperate for new planes, but not knowing how many planes that you're going to have in your fleet by July, let's say, is a very complicated, frustrating thing for airline executives.
My message to Boeing hasn't changed since the last time we talked. It's let's get your act together, deliver. First, focus on the basics. Get aircraft that are quality at first and foremost and safe.
The pressure on Boeing has led to a major leadership shakeup, and in an effort to correct manufacturing flaws and get production back on track, it announced it's in talks to buy fuselage maker Spirit AeroSystems, a company that Boeing spun off in 2005.
So much of Boeing's manufacturing has become outsourced, and now Boeing is kind of backtracking and saying, okay, maybe that was a little bit too much, especially when it comes to the maker of their fuselages.
Spirit AeroSystems, which is not to be confused with Spirit Airlines, is one of the biggest aerostructure companies in the world, with many locations around the globe. It makes components for both commercial and military aircraft, including larger elements like fuselages and wings.
Boeing is far and away their largest customer, and Spirit provides 100% of the fuselages for the world's second most popular aircraft, the 737.
Over the past few years, there have been a series of manufacturing flaws that have come out of the Spirit AeroSystems factory on big chunks of the fuselage that are going to Boeing.
There's clearly a lot of manufacturing mishaps that are going on.
Yeah.
So Boeing has to bring Spirit in-house to be better managed.
The deal, if it closes, would be the biggest for Boeing since its merger with McDonnell Douglas in 1997. Spirit, however, also supplies parts to Airbus and other plane manufacturers, making the deal a little complex.
We're going to be patient, we'll let them get their job done with their respective customers, and then we'll get a deal done.
The Boeing company has been around for over 100 years. It helped usher in the jet age and brought commercial flight to the world.
They designed and built some of the most successful commercial aircraft in aviation history. And I think it's important to remember that in 15 years, Boeing went from the first version of the Boeing 707 to the Boeing 747 jumbo jet.
Boeing got started in Seattle and expanded over the last century. It started building planes in Kansas during World War II, including the infamous B-29 bomber at its subsidiary company Sturman Aircraft. This would later become the Boeing Wichita division.
Airplanes are made of a very global supply chain these days, and if you go back in time 30 or 40 years ago, that wasn't the case. Most of the airplane was made in one location, and there were parts of it that were sourced from outside suppliers, let's say the systems and the engines. But by and large, the structure of the aircraft was mostly made in-house by the aircraft manufacturers. And that really began to change in the 1980s and 1990s.
In 1997, Boeing merged with McDonnell Douglas. It was an aircraft manufacturer which made commercial planes like the MD-11 and MD-80, as well as space and military aircraft.
There is a belief that the focus at Boeing has shifted since this merger with McDonnell Douglas to profitability as opposed to engineering excellence.
The McDonnell team was more cost concerned than the Boeing team. A good relevant current example is Spirit AeroSystems. Why was Spirit cut loose? Well, one, at the time, the company was focused on RONA, return on net assets. That was a McDonnell Douglas thing. Two, at the time, many companies, including Boeing in the aerospace and defense world, fancying themselves as system integrators, not fabricators.
Boeing at the time looked at its manufacturing division in Wichita, Kansas, where they made the fuselage, and said, if we spun this out into a separate standalone company, we could take a lot of assets off our books, a lot of work in process off our books, and we could drive up our return on invested capital. And this standalone company, in turn, could also provide services and components to other manufacturers and give us a better value.
Boeing sold the Wichita unit in 2005 for $1.5 billion to private equity firm Onyx Corporation, forming Spirit AeroSystems. Today, Spirit AeroSystems is still headquartered in Wichita.
In 2023, 70% of the revenue that Spirit AeroSystems generated came from work from Boeing.
Boeing says it can build one of its 737 aircraft in just 9 days, but many of those parts arrive already built, like the fuselage, which gets sent via train from Kansas. Boeing does a quick final assembly versus building the plane from start to finish in one place. After Spirit was spun off from Boeing, it began making parts for other manufacturers, including its main rival, Airbus. It manufactures the wings for the Airbus 220 at its facility in Northern Ireland and parts of the A350 fuselage in North Carolina.
Boeing spun off its Wichita unit as Spirit AeroSystems to improve profitability. That puts the financial squeeze on Spirit AeroSystems to build the fuselages for the lowest possible cost. But clearly, this has come with some intangible cost in terms of quality control.
When aerostructures is not a highly profitable part of the supply chain, it's probably a 5 to 7% margin business. In 2011, suppliers were paid in 30 days after they delivered their finished product. If you look at where things are today, it's 120 days later. And that is extremely hard for the working capital.
Spirit has faced some issues since the 2005 spinoff. It's been fined by OSHA for workplace violations, including exposure to hazardous material and some deaths. Spirit has also struggled financially since 2019. Its stock is down over 60% the last 4 years due to the pandemic and production halt of the 737 MAX.
Spirit derives the lion's share of its profits and revenue from these 737 fuselages. When you shut down your production line, as we did in the 737 MAX incident, it is absolutely devastating to Spirit and to Spirit's suppliers.
In 2022, Boeing reported defects in fuselages provided by Spirit. In 2023, the company reported some bulkheads had misdrilled holes in them, further delaying production. In addition, the global supply chain still faces challenges post-pandemic.
Labor prices have escalated. Spirit agreed to a 40% wage increase with its employees over a 4-year period, and raw material prices started going up and lead times went up.
Spirit replaced its CEO last fall with Pat Shanahan, a former Boeing employee.
Pat Shanahan, a Boeing veteran who really helped fix the 787 program and has a lot of credibility in Seattle. When he went in to become the new CEO at Spirit, I think he saw things and was able to speak reality to the Boeing leadership in a way that perhaps the prior leadership wasn't.
Boeing and Spirit AeroSystems both just confirming an earlier report that they are, in fact, in merger talks.
Boeing spent years trying to restore its reputation after 2 crashes of its best-selling 737 MAX planes in 2018 and 2019 that killed 346 people. The more recent crisis, where a door panel flew off because bolts were missing, has brought even sharper focus over its manufacturing process.
The fuselage that Spirit delivered was the door that blew out was removed to Boeing and was reinstalled without the fasteners. So not Spirit's fault, that was Boeing's fault. But I think, before that, there have been significant issues with quality defects with the Spirit fuselages.
The current talk about exploring, bringing Spirit back under the wing, that's probably a good decision ultimately, right? Because it gives you control over an important piece of your supply chain.
Boeing was trying to ramp up production of its best-selling jet, but since the Alaska Airlines door incident, it has sharply slowed it down after an audit of Boeing's production line by the FAA found dozens of issues.
The FAA has taken a very hard line with Boeing. They said, Boeing, you cannot increase your production of the 737 MAX until we are satisfied with your production practices.
Boeing makes most of its money in commercial aircraft today off the 737. So where Boeing goes with the production rates on the 737 has a huge impact on the overall profitability of Boeing commercial aircraft and of Boeing Inc. as well.
The Federal Aviation Administration gave Boeing 90 days to come up with a quality control plan, which is up at the end of May.
So we took all of the inspection processes and the people doing those inspections, and then the people who are doing the rework embedded in these positions in the factory, and we moved it to Wichita. From that day forward, which was really March 1st, we will only accept, they will only ship a conforming fuselage, which means it comes in this door in near perfect shape, and then it moves through this factory at a much reduced cycle.
Spirit AeroSystems reported on its Q1 2024 earnings call that it's seen a 15% improvement in quality after implementing new inspection protocols. But the company just announced it will have to lay off up to 450 workers at its Wichita location because of the slowdown in delivery rates.
So one of the things that's complex about Boeing buying back Spirit, its fuselage maker, is that the company also does a lot of work for Airbus, which is Boeing's main rival. So they're going to have to divide up some of that work, and it does get very complex into how they're going to do that.
In light of the situation today, where Boeing has potentially the interest to take over Spirit, we could also imagine that some of the work packages could be, again, find their way to Airbus and we take them over. But that, quite frankly, is a discussion in very, very early stages.
The deal isn't done yet, but I think what we see likely happening is that Boeing will take over those parts of the business most closely associated with Boeing, headlined by the Wichita operation. But then those elements of the business that support Airbus, we think are likely either to be sold to Airbus or to a third-party entity.
Boeing just agreed to give Spirit an advance payment of $425 million to help the fuselage maker keep up production demand until a possible deal can be reached.
We are working diligently to get it done, and I'm determined to get that done. Spirit, in working with its other customers, are taking actions to ensure that all of those relationships are what they need to be. And everything they do in that regard is better for us. And then we'll get a deal done. I believe in Q2, it's more than likely.
Boeing's first quarter was better than analysts expected, but the company spent close to $4 billion in cash as it tries to stabilize its production output. And in order to make more profits, it needs to make more planes.
We are already beginning to see signs of more predictable and reduced cycle times in our factory as a result of these enhanced quality control standards. While near-term delivery shortfalls hurt, the long-term benefits from a synchronized supply chain will be substantial.
The good news is that Boeing is poised to really start generating significant cash flow, free cash flow, if it gets its act together. It really needs the right leadership.
The company is also under pressure from the Department of Justice. It said Boeing violated a 2021 settlement that protected it from criminal charges tied to the fatal 737 MAX crashes, opening the company up to a potential U.S. prosecution. Boeing has denied those claims. Whether or not this deal happens, Boeing has a long road ahead to get back to higher production rates.
We really only have two suppliers of large commercial airplanes, and Airbus can't do it all. Will Boeing turn itself around? Yeah, most certainly it will. It's going to take time, though.
Airline customers are desperate for new planes. Travel demand has continued to be very strong coming out of the pandemic. We've heard from major Boeing customers, Southwest, United, Alaska, express frustration at the company. They want them to get quality right. And they know that that's not a tomorrow thing.